Good afternoon. I am honored. It is a privilege to be able to be with you today. As I drove with my son-in-law, Jesse Hurst, down the road from Dallas to Waco, I was reminded of the many Saturdays that I drove to be here when my son played football for Baylor and being asked to speak at numbers of events at Baylor throughout the years and serving during his tenure as a chaplain for the football team. So I got to ride on the team plane and didn't have to spend my money to go to the away games. I just wish he played here when RG3 was a quarterback, okay? But I am indeed honored and privileged to be able to be with you today. Ms. McLean called me, and the invitation was really quite short. He said, "Tony Evans, do you believe in free speech?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Come give one." So I'm very grateful. Romero, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being the point person for what will be, we're trusting God, a glorious thing. One of the main issues of our national ministry now, the Urban Alternative, is doing this kind of thing, going to communities all across the country, trying to get churches together for comprehensive impact ongoingly. The great excitement about this event is the excitement of the event. The great tragedy about this event is that if it only winds up being an event. And to see the bigger picture is the key. So I'm going to try to condense 25 hours into 20 minutes. I've been given 20 minutes. Some of the books I bought will go into this in a lot more detail than I'm able to now, if you want to go deeper. But I want you to understand what this is, why this is, and why it is critical that you do it in a comprehensive, ongoing, impactful way. At my core, I am an ecclesiologist. Ecclesiology is the biblical doctrine of the church, and that's at my core. I am a churchman. The first mention of the word church is found in the book of Matthew, chapter 16, verse 18. The word church is never mentioned prior to that. It is mentioned by Jesus Christ, the head of the church, bringing up the word church in a very interesting context. Jesus is in Caesarea Philippi, and in Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples a question. He said, "Who do men say that I am?" in verse 13. And they came up with some respectable answers. Some say you're Elijah, John the Baptist. Some say you're Jeremiah, one of the prophets. All good people, but all wrong answers. Polite answers, but none of them wrong. Then he goes to his clergy, his disciples, apostles in the making, and he says, "But who do you say that I am?" I want to know, is my clergy, are the guys I'm preparing to lead the world, are you saying what the crowd is saying? Or are you doing something different? Now that's when Peter speaks up. Peter's my favorite guy. Peter is the leader of the group. Wherever you see the list of the names of the disciples spelled out chronologically in the New Testament Gospels, Peter's name is always first. The boy liked to wear peppermint socks the way he loved to keep his foot in his mouth, but on this occasion, Peter hit a bullseye. He said, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." But Peter was not asked the question. You see, when Jesus said, "Who do you say that I am?" the word "you" is plural in the Greek. So Jesus wasn't asking an individual, he was asking the group. If Jesus were Texan, he would be saying, "Who do y'all say the Son of Man is?" So he was asking the group a question, but Peter is the one who steps forth as the spokesperson for the group. He was Romero in the situation. And so he says, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus then comes to him and he says to him in verse 16, he says, "Flesh and blood did not reveal that to you, my Father who is in heaven." And then he says, "From now on, I'm going to change your name. You're no longer going to be Simon, which means pebble. You're going to be Peter, which means stone." So the boy just got a promotion from a pebble to a stone, which is why when he denied the Lord in John chapter 20, he calls him Simon again because he got reduced back to a pebble. That's another story. So he's now a stone. But then Jesus comes with a staggering thought. He said, "You're a stone, you were a pebble, you are a stone, but upon this rock I will build my church." says, I'm not going to build what I'm trying to do on a particular spokesperson, even though you're the leader. What I need to do with what I'm going to do, which I'm going to share in a moment, I need a rock. Now, the question is, to what does the rock refer? Most people would say, well, Jesus is referring to himself. I don't think so. Jesus has already agreed he's the Son of God. He's already affirmed that. The Greek word for rock comes from a word petra. Stone is petros, Peter, but rock is petra, and it was used in classical Greek of a collection of stones that had been hewed together to form something bigger than any one stone could ever be on its own, and thus it was called a rock. It was used of a rocky ledge or a rocky cliff or a slab that had been connected together. If Peter were the expositor of the conversation, he would have probably quoted from his own epistle, 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 1, where he says, ye are all living stones come together to form one spiritual house. In other words, I'm suggesting Jesus did not forget he was talking to the group, not just to Peter. So he does not leave the group out. Peter, you're going to lead this effort, but for the effort to produce what the effort is designed to produce, I just don't need an articulate stone. I need a bunch of stones being hewed together to form something bigger than any one stone could ever be on its own, so that these stones become a rock. And it is upon the unity of the rock that I will build my church. The theology of unity is a theology. You see, we know the triune God is one God composed of three co-equal persons who are distinct in personhood, yet one in essence. Like a pretzel with three holes, the first hole is not the second hole is not the third hole, but you tie all three holes together by the same dough. And so you have one pretzel with three distinct holes. And what you have in the Godhead is the Father, not the Son, the Spirit is not the Father, but all three are tied together by the same dough of divine nature. And this one God always acts in unity. Jesus said, I work because my Father works. The only time unity was broken was on Calvary. But apart from Calvary, where sin had to be addressed, the function of the Godhead only does what it is designed to do when unity occurs, which is why Satan's biggest goal in history is disunity. Because if he can create disunity, he can keep God at bay. Okay? Because he knows the nature of God. And since God functions in unity, creating disunity keeps God at a distance because God cannot conflict with himself. So he says, if I can get these stones to become a rock, then I'm going to build something. And what I'm going to build is the ecclesia, the Greek word for church. First time it's ever used. But it's not a religious word. The word ecclesia was used in koine, everyday speaking Greek. If you were living in the Roman world at that time, and you were walking up and down the street, you would hear the word ecclesia all the time. It wasn't a unique word, because it referred to the assembly of people who came together to legislate in the city-states of Greece. It was a legislative body. It's used that way in Acts chapter 19, verse 39, where it says that the people assembled, ecclesia, to pass laws against the expansion of Christianity. So what you have are a lot of ecclesias taking place to restrict the church. You've got ecclesias, gatherings of people. You've got 1% of the population who is now redefining the definition of marriage as an ecclesia. That is, they are a legislative body. But of course, when Jesus uses the word, he's talking about something else. He's talking about people coming together, not just to worship, not just to sing songs, not just to hear a sermon, but to legislate from heaven to history. America has embassies all around the world. An embassy is a little bit of America a long way from home. Wherever you find an American embassy, the laws of America rule. Because all embassies are sovereign territory. They don't belong to the country they're in, they belong to the country they're from. So American embassies, wherever you find them, rule on behalf of the bigger nation called America. If you get in trouble, you want to get across that embassy gate, because once you get across that embassy gate, you're in America now. Well, guess what the church is supposed to be? A little bit of heaven a long way from home. It is supposed to be where the values of eternity are resident in history. Now, here's the key. One of the books that we just came out with is America, Turning a Nation to God. And one of the points we make in the book is God will not skip the church house to change the White House. He will not skip what the church is doing to make the nation better. In fact, Ephesians 3 verse 10 says, God checks with the church before he deals with the principalities and powers. So it is the unity of the church without compromising any of the fundamentals of the church that will determine God's involvement for the nation. Which is why 2 Chronicles 7:14 says, if my people, called by my name, not if the culture, if my people. That's why the divisions, political divisions, class divisions, racial divisions, denominational divisions, those divisions that keep us at bay make the church a co-conspirator in the decline of the culture. One of the primary reasons that America is falling apart is that the church has been ineffective. I will build my church. Notice he says, I'm building the church, and the gates of hell is trying to prevail against it. We're in a football stadium. Jesus says, I'm on offense. I got the ball because I'm doing the building. Hell is on defense because it's trying to stop me. So how do you know whether your church or the group of churches are really Jesus' church? Jesus says, by who's winning? Because he says the church I'm building, hell is not prevailing against it. So if hell is prevailing against it, we must not be building his church. We must be building our church. We're just using his name. He says, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not be able to overtake that. But the reason why we can have all these churches on all these corners with all these preachers and all these members and all these buildings and all these programs and still have all this mess is because there's a dead monkey on the line. And the dead monkey is the absence of the unity of the church. Not sameness. Unity, the Father is not the Son is not the Spirit, but oneness of purpose. That's the biblical meaning of unity. Why unify the church? Here's why. Verse 19 of Matthew 16. He says, I will give you the keys to the kingdom. What do you do with keys? You gain access. Access to your house, access to your car, access to your office. Keys are access. They get you in and they get you out. You ever been in a hurry and not been able to find your keys? I mean, you're not going nowhere. Okay? Or maybe you're like me. You got a whole key ring full of keys, and some of them keys, you don't even know what they go to anymore. Here it is. The church does not exist for the church. The church exists for the kingdom. I will give you the keys to the kingdom. One of the reasons why the culture does not feel our impact is that the church has begun existing for the church and not the greater program of God. When I wrote the book, The Kingdom Agenda, unless the church plugs into the kingdom, then you will not see the king do what he wants to do through the church because the church has missed its calling. Only the church has been given the keys to the kingdom. The government hasn't been given the keys to the kingdom. You don't have the personal keys to the kingdom. Jesus says the church has the keys to the kingdom, meaning only when you do my plan, my way, for my agenda will you see me show up. That's why you can have prayer meetings and praise meetings and gatherings and all that, and nothing changes after the meeting is over because you weren't using his keys. We were using our keys. I was in the Marriott Hotel in Midtown Manhattan a couple of years ago. I had to check out, catch plane, go to the Hilton Hotel. When I got to the Hilton Hotel in Chicago, real cold and everything, I had my bags. I left the Marriott in New York, flew to Chicago, got in the Hilton Hotel, checked in, went to the 35th floor, click, click, put my key in, red light. Click, click, put my key in, red light. Click, click, put my key in, red light. I was evangelically ticked off. I done gone up 35 floors. and the key doesn't work. So now I got to go no phone in the lobby. I got to go all the way back down. I said, excuse me, sir, this key does not work. He said, excuse me, sir, that key doesn't go to this hotel. I was using a Marriott key that I hadn't thrown away in a Hilton lock, and guess what? Those kingdoms don't mix. Okay? Most of the Anglos here are probably Republican. Most of the African Americans and a large part of the Hispanic community here are going to be Democratic. The Republicans are going to vote Republican because of concern about the moral issues. The Democrats are going to vote Democrat because of the social concern and feel like there's going to be more justice. Well, I'm here to tell you God doesn't ride the back of donkeys or elephants. You know, Joshua chapter 5, he's going around Jericho, he's walking around Jericho and doing reconnaissance. This huge guy shows up in battle array with a whole army behind him, and Joshua said, whose side are you on? Are you on Jericho's side or our side? Man looked at him and said, you confused. I'm neither on your side nor I'm on their side. I'm captain of the Lord's army. I didn't come to take sides, I come to take over. That's because he's a king with a kingdom. I will give you the keys to the kingdom. And what will happen in closing? He says, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Binding and loosing means authority. That's what binding and loosing means. In other words, you get to make the call. Right now, everybody else is making the call, and we're reacting. When I gathered together 100 pastors, or they called me in to give them our vision for the community and the strategy, because I told them you need more than a protest, you need a plan and a strategy, and now to see them coming together, and now having the government come to them, having the community come to them to lead in the healing of that community. Authority. We're on a football field. You know what? You know who the most powerful people on the field are? Not the players. The players are young, stronger, and fast. But the most powerful people on the field are the refs. The players can knock you down. The refs can put you out. They can send you to the sidelines. When they blow their whistle, they shut it down. When they pull out a yellow flag, you stop where you are, and they tell you whether you move forward 5 yards or move back 10 yards. Why? Because even though they're fatter, older, and slower, they have authority. We're outnumbered in the world, but when we're operating as a church under the King in a unified way, he shares his kingdom authority with us for the transformation of the culture. In the white brochure, that's what we gave out to Ferguson, the 3-point plan. We're taking it across the country. 3 points. To every year have a solemn assembly, a sacred gathering like you're going to do here, where the community is called together, led by the church, to invite God's manifest presence back into your community. If every community does that on an annual basis, God will get undivided attention through the pastors and through the leaders on an annual basis. Well, once you invite God back, because that's what a solemn assembly was in Scripture, it was a sacred gathering because God couldn't be found, to invite God's presence back in a collective way. Second thing is good works. You got to do something that the community can see that benefits them. That's why our big thing is the adoption of schools. Why? Because every community has church, schools, and families. You adopt a school, you get to the kids. Kids have parents. That's church, school, and family. So you can reach every community with kids, education, families, simply by adopting a school, and we train churches all over the country how to do that. And if every school gets adopted by a church or a group of churches, particularly across racial lines, then you can have reconciliation through service, not through seminars. We don't need reconciliation seminars. We need to get to know one another while we're serving somebody else. And so you have good works. Then you have a common voice, the third thing. The common voice is, because you called God back, because you have visible good works, now everybody's got to listen to what you have to say. So you have a common voice. And now you have ongoing community impact. And so that's our vision for the nation. That's the message we're carrying out. I'm delighted to be able to serve you here. We look forward to meeting many of you. We'll hang around for a few minutes at the book table. God bless you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me.